The Dualsense Edge has been out for a little while now, and it's time to do an actual impression after having used the controller. Hello and welcome back to Gears and Tech. As you heard in the intro, we're going to be talking about the Dualsense Edge Controller today. I know you can see I have other controllers over here, and that is to help build credibility. Yes, I'm not just some Sony fanboy who just drools over everything that Sony makes. I actually have used a lot of controllers, especially for the PlayStation 5, and I've done a ton of videos on these controllers already. I've used them extensively, and so my opinion in this video is actually based on trying a lot of different controllers so that you know you're making the best choice for your PlayStation 5. Now, it should also be mentioned, everything you see here was purchased with my own money. I was not sent this device from Sony, so I'm able to speak my mind. I can tell you exactly how I feel because I am just a regular consumer making regular YouTube videos, telling you guys what my experience has been, because I don't want you guys to go and waste your money on a piece of crap. A good example of that would be the Hori Fight controller or the Fight Pad or whatever it was called. I did a review on that. I spent a ton of money on that controller. It was absolute garbage. And by the end of the video, I told you, this is a steaming hot pile of crap. Don't waste your money. So I'm not afraid to tell you if you should save your money, or I'm not afraid to tell you if this is actually a really decent buy. So today I want to cover just the Dualsense Edge controller. Now, I've been using this controller for a little while now, and I've used it extensively for my gaming. If you check in on my Twitch stream, some people have actually checked in while I was gaming and said, hey, how do you like the controller? And I flash it and show you that I am actually using that controller as I kind of build my opinion about how it is. Now, I will add a bit of a disclaimer. I am coming from this, which is the Be Savior controller. This one was custom modded by me to include bigger thumbsticks or taller thumbsticks, as well as clicky triggers. I usually do just first-person shooter games, mostly like Call of Duty and that sort of thing. So those kinds of mods are very important to me. So you can imagine my excitement when Sony said, hey, you know what? We got you. We understand the features you're looking for, and we're gonna just bake that into our standard Dualsense controller. So this controller comes with a lot of the features that I really liked about my Be Savior controller. So we'll go through some of those features and how I actually feel about it now that I've used the controller. So let's start out first with the fit and finish of the controller. This controller is actually very premium. It feels premium. The weight, it's got a ton of weight. It's weighted so well. The way that the thumbsticks swap out on here is very smart. It's solid. It's very solid. It wasn't like hobbled together. They have solid metal locking hasps on here, and it feels really, really good. There's a lot of detail, like surprising detail right here. I'll try and get that for you so you can see it. They included the X, square, and triangle design on the front of the L2 and the R2 triggers, and it actually creates a surprising amount of grip for your trigger fingers to just go on there. It's unexpected. It's surprising, and it's actually quite appreciated. The other surprising aspect is this inside edge right here and right here. This actually has a bit of a textured rubbery feel to it. So when you're holding the controller, you can actually get your pinky fingers on here and really grip the controller down so that you're able to push all the other buttons without the controller slipping out. And that's one complaint that I heard from people about the standard Dualsense controller, because this inside edge is actually very slippery. Everything else as far as size and function is the same as the Dualsense controller. So if you're comfortable with a Dualsense controller, this will fit in your hands very easily. It will be second nature, and it'll just work. So I give the design and the fit and finish a solid 10 out of 10. Now, you know, maybe 10, maybe a 9 out of 10, because maybe they could do something better. But like I said, if you like the PlayStation Dualsense design, it continues that design, and it feels familiar in your hand when going from a regular Dualsense to a Dualsense Edge. Now, going around to the other features, one of the features that all PlayStation 5 controllers are highly rumored to have is stick drift. Now, that's where one of your thumbsticks just automatically always goes off in one direction or another. It tends to drift off. This includes the ability to buy a module such as this for $20 and swap it when you do develop stick drift. It is very easy to do, which I will now demonstrate. So there's a lever back here that you release with your fingernail, like that. That faceplate pops off. And then there's this little metal lever here, which lifts up and the module comes right out. So it's very easy. The module's high quality and it just slides right in there. It's so well thought out. I'm very impressed with how good that worked. It's like it should have always been there from the start. And then that just clips back on. It's very, uh-oh, now I've turned my PlayStation on because I'm pushing buttons. The other thing that they've included are adjustable height thumbsticks. So right now I have these thumbsticks on. You can see the tall one for this side, the short one for that side. And in this case that comes with it, I've got the rest of the thumbsticks. So there's is that another tall thumbstick? Okay, I've never really paid much attention to that. So you've got sets of each, just like that. So you can do a mix match of tall or short. Now, the one complaint that I would have with that is these thumbsticks are mushroom top. So if you use anything other than the standard low profile thumbsticks, you are going to have mushroom tops instead of these concave tops. Now I am very used to the concave top. The mushroom top feels very, very weird to me. And the height of these thumbsticks, let's compare this to my regular daily driver controller. So this is how tall those thumbsticks are compared to these thumbsticks, which are supposed to be tall. So my regular side thumbstick is about as tall as the tall thumbstick for the PlayStation 5 Dualsense Edge. Now this could be a pro or a con for you. Now I'm gonna tell you how it feels for me. So I normally have my tall thumbstick on that side, and I have my short thumbstick like that on that side. And that's because when you're playing first-person shooters, this is usually the thumbstick that you use to aim with. So the idea is the taller the thumbstick, the more positional accuracy that you have, because you have a bigger swing arc that comes down to the pivot point, which allows you to really zero in on your aiming. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the thumbstick height, but one thing I can tell you with certainty is that this lower thumbstick height has caused me to lose more battles since I've started using this controller than ever. And what that looks like is I start shooting at a guy and he's strafing to the right, and the amount that I move my thumbstick to catch up to him has muscle memory based on me using these thumbsticks for the last year and a half. So I actually need to get used to the difference that you need to move on here in order to actually be accurate. It's something that I'm not too pleased about, and it's very frustrating. So if you are used to a different height thumbstick, you will need to get used to this. It is not the same as any other standard height thumbstick that I've seen. And when we compare like this Victrix Pro, that secondary thumbstick is that tall and that one is that tall. So they're pretty much the same. It's kind of like an industry standard that a tall thumbstick should be tall, whereas Sony's tall thumbstick is like half as tall. It's disappointing, and I've actually looked around at different options to get a taller thumbstick for this, and there just aren't any. So one way that I've considered fixing it is actually to take my extra thumb module and tear it apart and install the Extreme Rate Pro taller thumbstick onto these modules. Now that's something that I'll maybe look at in a future video, but for now just know that the tall thumbstick is not quite as tall as you might be used to if you've used other controllers with adjustable height thumbsticks. I would believe that the Scuff would be the same height as kind of these ones, so if you're going from a Scuff to this, it will be a difference and you will have to learn a whole new control style to get comfortable with it again. Moving around to the back, it does have back buttons. Now it has two options. There's these guys, and they are metal and they are magnetic. So when they go in, they just pull themselves in. They feel beautiful in your hand. So when you're pushing the button, they fit right where these fingers would naturally be. You still have 2 fingers left over for grip, and you can just push those buttons and it works great. So they feel really great. If you're coming from Extreme Rate back paddles, you will need to get used to them because these come actually down farther and are in a better position. You also have these little bumper wings, I guess, and I can put those on just so you can see kind of what that looks like. In all honesty, I haven't really used these wings because I really don't think I'm gonna like them, but who knows, maybe I would. Maybe I should give them a chance. So they install like that, and then I guess, so the positioning of those, I'll be honest, I haven't really played with them. They're actually more similar to the inside buttons on the Rise 4 remap kit. So if you're used to putting your fingers way out into here to push the buttons, then these would be quite familiar to you. They're not that familiar to me, but they do feel pretty solid in your hand still. But I'm not using them, putting them right there. I'll put these guys back on because these are the ones you're gonna use. I promise you, those are what you're gonna use. They feel good, the click rate's good, they're great in your hand. Now, on to the biggest feature, and that would be the adjustable trigger stops. So if I turn these up there like that, I have the full adaptive trigger. So this is what the Dualsense is famous for, is that adaptive trigger mixed with the haptic feedback. Both of those features are still present on this controller. So you have the full experiential controller experience for when you're playing, you know, Horizon or God of War or anything like that. But when it's time to do some real gaming, you just flip this down, and you flip that down, and you immediately have a trigger stop. Now, the trigger stops are not the same as clicky triggers. So these guys are clicky triggers. They're more like a mouse click. You pull it and it clicks. It's very short throw. It's very clicky. When you do this, they're pretty short throw, but not as short as a clicky trigger. So it does take some getting used to as well. Also, a little bit of a disappointment is the fact that the software says that you can tune the trigger activation point. That's not totally true. All you can adjust is kind of the high-end activation. You still have the same low-end activation. I was hoping to bring the low-end activation up to where these are more clicky-like, but the software doesn't support it the way that I thought it would. It's hard to explain, and I'll kind of show you an overlay while I'm talking about it so you can see what I'm talking about, but just know that you can't fully mimic a clicky trigger. Also, while we're talking about the PlayStation software, this controller fully integrates with your PlayStation software. So there's buttons right here. These are function buttons. You are able to actually push this button. You have to push and hold it. It will pull up a menu on your PlayStation. It will ask you which profile you would like to activate. It makes it very seamless. So these other controllers, they also have controller profiles, but it's saved on, in this case, like a little OLED screen, or in this case, it's through a series of button presses to try and guess. And all of them do kind of the same thing. Sony obviously has full access to the Sony hardware and the software, so they are able to implement it straight into the software. Once you are in that controller profile, you have the ability to adjust your trigger points, which we already talked about, but you also have specific tuning options for your analog sticks. These are a very powerful tool to have to really dial in your analog stick to where you are a very pro level gamer with having that adjustability. Now, I did play with that and I tried different configurations, and what I found was, again, with the tall thumbstick and my muscle memory, I haven't had any issues with aiming, and I found that by playing with those profiles, it actually made it worse for me. Now, I think in time I could get better, and if I could dial in the profile that I think would be good, then I could, go down a little bit in skill, learn that profile, and then get better. But I have some concerns about doing that at this point because I'm not sure if I want this to be my daily driver yet. So those features are there, but it does add a bit of a kind of a tinker effect. If you don't like tinkering with stuff, you probably will end up like me and just use the basic setup because that's what you're used to. So when we're talking about the features of the controller, I give them a solid 8 or 9 out of 10. They are amazing and all the features are there. There are some downsides to this controller, and I've kind of talked about those already. The biggest one that you're gonna wanna know about is the battery life. How is the battery life? So it's no secret that the battery in the regular Dualsense is pretty big. The battery in here is pretty small. My personal experience, so I don't have time to game all day. So I'll add that disclaimer right from the start. I am able to game for 4 to 5 hours with this controller and it will not die, okay? And 5 hours is a very long gaming session for me. If you are somebody who games for 10 hours at a time, this controller is probably not for you unless you want to use the included USB dongle, or not dongle, USB charger cord, which allows you to plug it in and then continue your gaming. At that point, it doesn't really matter how long the battery lasts. But if you require a battery-powered controller, this thing's only gonna last you roughly 7 hours, maybe a little bit more. It depends on use. And as the battery gets older, obviously it will last not as long. Now, I think that somebody will come up with a battery pack, a booster for this that'll just plug into the USB port. It'll sit kind of up in here and it'll double your battery life. You can bet that those are coming. So your battery life is not going to be too big of an issue, but if it's a big issue for you right now and you can't plug in, then you have to consider a regular DualSense controller that's been modded, or like a B-Savior controller or something of that nature. Now, overall, this controller is a solid controller. The price point at $200 US. It seems expensive, but I promise when you compare it to other controllers in the space, this is the best controller for $200. Now, I know some of you are gonna ask a question right away. They're gonna say, Anton, the controller right beside you there, the B-Savior controller, is not $200, it's cheaper. So if you had a choice, would you take the B-Savior controller or would you take the DualSense controller? And I'm gonna tell you that that answer is gonna come up in a future video. I'm actually gonna do a head-to-head of this controller versus the B-Savior, and this controller versus this guy right here, the Victrix BFG Pro controller, because this is also a very solid controller with a very specific purpose, and it overcomes a lot of problems that you might have, and this could be the controller of your dreams. But you won't know because I haven't compared them yet. So as a standalone controller, as this controller, is it worth it? Absolutely. If you are coming from a DualSense controller and you're wondering if the DualSense Edge is a good controller to consider, absolutely. You definitely will not go wrong with this controller. It is a great controller. I do not regret my decision at all. It feels great in my hands. I love using this controller. It's great in every way. Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video. We hope you enjoy the content in this video, and we'd love to have you come back. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And for those subscribers who are looking for that extra special thing that you can do to support this channel, consider joining our members group. That's where we're building this community, the Gears and Tech community, where we can all enjoy content together. You'll get special perks, which we'd love for you to check out by clicking the link down below. For those of you who are just happy to watch the video, that's okay too. You can check out some of our other content right over here, where we've got some previous videos that have already been uploaded and enjoyed by many of our viewers already. We do hope to see you again. This has been Gears and Tech. Have a great day.